Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about one of the oldest and most interesting groups of people in the world, the Khoisan. If that name sounds new to you, it's actually used for two groups of people in southern Africa, the Khoisan and the San. These aren't just old names from the past, they're real people with a long, rich history that goes back thousands of years. One really cool thing about the Khoisan is their language. They use clicking sounds when they speak, and these clicks are so unique that you can still hear them in some other African languages today, like Khoisan. This shows how much the Khoisan have influenced the people around them. They lived in parts of southern Africa that weren't great for farming, especially for the crops that Bantu-speaking people used. That's why they mostly lived in places like Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa's Cape region, areas where you can still find groups like the Nama and Damara. Scientists believe that the Khoisan are the descendants of some of the first modern humans who ever lived in southern Africa, maybe even the whole world, more than 150,000 years ago. That's a super long time, and some recent studies even say the Khoisan might be part of the group that gave rise to all modern humans. Here's something interesting. Even though their languages all have clicks, they don't all come from one original language. They actually belong to at least 3 totally different language families, which means those click sounds probably developed separately. That's pretty rare in language history. When people think about the San, they usually picture small groups of people who live by hunting and gathering in the Kalahari Desert in places like Namibia, Angola, and South Africa. The name San comes from the Khoisan language and means something like people who pick things up from the ground. It was used to describe people who didn't raise animals or grow crops. So it wasn't really about their background or ethnicity. It was more about how they lived. The word Khoisan is actually pretty new. It was made up in the early 1900s by a man named Leonhard Schultz and became more popular later thanks to an anthropologist named Isaac Shapira. People didn't use it much until the 1960s, when researchers were trying to group all the click languages together. During the time of colonialism and apartheid in South Africa, people with some Khoisan ancestry were sometimes called names like Cape Blacks or Western Cape Blacks to separate them from Bantu-speaking people, even though many Bantu people also had Khoisan ancestors. After apartheid ended, more Khoisan people started using the name themselves, especially when asking the government for land and recognition. So, where did the Khoisan come from? Scientists think their ancestors moved into southern Africa from Central or Eastern Africa over 150,000 years ago, maybe even 260,000 years ago. During a big drought about 130,000 years ago, there were 2 big groups of people in Africa, one group in the south that led to the Khoisan, and another in the central/eastern area that led to other modern humans. The San people came from the southern group and lived by hunting and gathering, while the Khoi people came later and started herding animals. For a really long time, from their early arrival until about 70,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Khoisan were actually the largest group of humans in the world. They lived all over southern and southeastern Africa. But when Bantu-speaking people started spreading with their new ways of farming and living, the Khoisan were pushed into smaller areas. There were also times when people with Khoisan ancestry moved back toward East Africa, and some scientists think this might have helped lead to humans eventually spreading out of Africa to other parts of the world. Some new studies are now challenging what we thought we knew about where modern humans came from. A recent paper in the science journal Nature says that instead of coming from just one place, modern humans might have come from a mix of different groups in Africa, including the ancestors of the Khoisan. So not only are the Khoisan one of the oldest groups of people, they might also help us understand where all humans came from. And around 75,000 years ago, during what's called the Late Stone Age, the San people, ancestors of the Khoisan, lived all over southern and eastern Africa. They mostly lived in dry places where farming was really tough. Later, around 20,000 years ago, there was another movement of people. Some experts think this might explain how some African languages, like Hadza, started using clicking sounds. During this time, people in southern Africa were using a tool-making method known as the Sangoan style. The San and Khoi people today still look similar to those early people, but there's debate about where the Khoi came from. Some believe they were farmers who moved into the area later. When the climate changed and got drier, farming didn't work as well, so they either began herding animals or started living more like the San, hunting and gathering. About 2,300 years ago, new groups of people arrived who farmed and raised animals. These people are ancestors of many of today's Bantu-speaking communities. As they settled in southern Africa, they mixed with the Khoisan. Their cultures and languages blended. That's why some modern South African languages, like Xhosa, Zulu, Swana, and Sotho, still have clicking sounds today. Millions of people in South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana now share this mixed heritage. The Khoisan were first written about by European explorers when the Portuguese arrived. This was about 1,000 years after the Bantu moved into the region. Sadly, meeting the Europeans brought disease, like smallpox, which killed many Khoisan. Later, when the Dutch came, they took over the grazing lands. The Khoisan tried to fight back, but colonization changed everything. Their social systems were damaged, and some were forced to work on farms or live as servants. Others joined Xhosa groups and became part of their communities. In 1738, a German missionary named Georg Schmidt started South Africa's first Christian mission in a mountain valley called Baviaanskloof. He worked with the Khoisan people there. Some European settlers married Khoisan women, and their children formed a new group called the Griqua. The Griqua later moved and started a new settlement, Griqualand East. Another place, Cat River, was created with help from a man named Andries Stockenstrom. It grew into a strong community where Khoi, Xhosa, and mixed people lived together, mostly speaking Afrikaans. In the late 1600s and early 1700s, the San people fought back when they were pushed off their land in what became known as the Bushman Wars. By the 1700s, the Dutch controlled the Western Cape, and many Khoisan were working tough jobs for little pay, almost like slavery. As more land was taken, Khoisan people lost not just land and animals, but also their way of life. After the Xhosa Rebellion ended in 1853, the government in the Cape tried to give the Khoi some rights to avoid future problems. They made a law that said men who owned a little bit of property could vote, no matter their race. But since most Khoi didn't own land, the law didn't help much. Things became even worse in the early 1900s. In Namibia, which was ruled by Germany back then, the Nama people, a Khoisan group, were almost wiped out. Between 1904 and 1908, more than 10,000 Nama and many San people were killed by the German army. In the 1950s, a South African writer named Lawrence van der Post made a TV series about the San people, which made more people around the world learn about them. But even that didn't stop their struggles. In Botswana, many San were forced to leave their homes in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. The government said it was to protect wildlife, but some believe it was really about the diamonds found there. In 2006, a court said kicking the San out was wrong, but even after that, the government kept doing it. The San are still trying to protect their land. After apartheid ended in 1994, more Khoisan people began calling themselves South Africa's First Nations. The word Khoisan became important again. In 1997, a university held a big event to talk about Khoisan identity and culture. Since 2015, Khoisan groups have been asking the government to recognize their rights and help return their land. The South African government allowed some land claims, but only for land taken after 1913. To claim land taken before that, the country's constitution would need to change. So far, that hasn't happened. Still, there have been some exciting discoveries. In 2019, scientists found rock carvings made by Khoisan people around 8,000 years ago at a place called Rain Snake Dike. The carvings show animals like hippos, horses, and antelope. These might be tied to Khoisan stories about making rain. Even today, the Khoisan face big problems, like being removed from their homes and losing access to their land. But their story is far from over. The Khoisan are still here, still strong and still holding on to their traditions and connection to the land they've known for thousands of years.